Story time about the psycho neighbor that stalked me. So, when I graduated college, I moved into a new apartment. When I first got there, I was moving my things in, and my neighbor introduced himself and helped me move a couple of things upstairs. After we had got done, he asked for my number, but I told him I wasn't really looking for a relationship. But he said, let's just swap numbers just in case, a fire happens. So I gave him my number, and I really didn't think nothing of it. Maybe a week later, he starts knocking on my door and giving me gifts just about every day, like teddy bears and flowers. Then maybe about 2 weeks later, I told him to stop because I wasn't really interested in him. So the next day, I wake up to make coffee and take out trash. When I pass my living room, the teddy bear gift that my neighbor gave me makes a click noise. When I quickly rip the teddy bear open, it's a camera inside. Like for part 2 about the psycho neighbor that stalked me. So, like I said earlier, the teddy bear gift that my neighbor had gave me makes a clicking noise. When I quickly rip the teddy bear open, it's a camera inside, and I go into a panic mode. Out of nowhere, there's a knock on my door, and it's my neighbor. He says, "Good morning, it's me again. You left your trash too close to the curb, so I moved it for you." I realized that my door was still open, so I try to run over and lock the door, but he just opens it. I yell at him, telling him to get out. He closes the door behind him and says, "That's no way to talk to a neighbor." I start backing up. He looks over and sees that I ripped the teddy bear apart. I didn't know what else to do, so I just ran to my room. And he chases after me and pulls my hair. Like for part 3. Part 3 about the psycho neighbor that stalked me. So he comes in, I run into my room, and he chases after me. Before I could get up, he pulls onto my hair and starts dragging me towards the kitchen. I saw the coffee that I had made earlier, and I was able to pick it up and throw the hot coffee in his face. He starts screaming loud, and I took that chance to run into my room and lock the door. I immediately start calling the police, and from there, it sounded like he ran out of my apartment. When the cops came, they're doing an investigation, and all the gifts that he gave me all had cameras in them. And when I told them about my neighbor, they did some digging, and come to find out, that man wasn't even my neighbor. He didn't even live at the apartment complex.
This is why you should be careful working in food delivery. When the pandemic hit, I lost my job and signed up to work for a food delivery app. I was making good money and the tips were nice too. During the first few months of working, I never had any weird experiences or customers. For the most part, everything was fine. There were times when I was a little scared of dropping off the food because it was in sketchy neighborhoods or it was dark outside, but nothing ever happened. I started feeling confident in my position and I let my guard down. One night, I got a delivery request and the tip was bigger than the total order. When I looked at the details of how to drop it off, I realized why the tip was so big. The instructions asked if I could open the door and bring it inside of the house as they were bedbound and unable to walk to the door. I knew I shouldn't do it. It was super against company policy, but I had an aunt who was bedbound and it hit a soft spot. When I opened the door of the house, I was hit with the most vile stench that's ever hit my nose. I looked around and called out to the customer. It was silent for a few seconds. Suddenly, someone croaked out, "I'm back here, come on down." The voice came from a bedroom down the hallway that was pitch black. As I walked towards the room, my stomach was turning. I entered the room and put the order down, but I didn't see anyone. When I turned around to leave, suddenly a man appeared in front of me. Part 2 of why you should be careful working in food delivery. This man was tall, wore glasses, and was balding. He was also fully functional from what I could tell. In this moment, I realized how badly I had messed up. I was cornered away from the doorway. He thanked me for dropping off his order. I politely replied, "You're welcome," and tried to step around him to leave. He took a step in the same direction at the same exact moment and asked me what I was up to for the rest of the night. My heart was pounding out of my chest, but I quickly replied that I had another order to drop off and that they were waiting, so I had to go. However, he didn't move. Somehow, I mustered up enough courage to step towards him and say, "Excuse me, I really have to go." His hand was on the door and I knew he was either going to let me go or shut it and attack me. He stared at me for a moment, then hesitated and stepped out of the way. I quickly slipped past him and made a beeline for the front door. As I twisted the doorknob, I heard his footsteps running towards me. I swiftly opened the door, slammed it behind me, and sprinted towards my car. I felt the adrenaline rushing through my veins. I looked back to see if he was running after me, but he was just standing in the doorway, watching me run away with a smirk on his face. I never should have gone inside for a delivery, and I never will again.
Story time about how my boyfriend's best friend tried to ruin our relationship. So a little background information. My boyfriend used to be best friends with this one girl. We're gonna call her Jamie. Well, Jamie and my boyfriend were best friends for years. And their friendship was more flirty than anything. Well, him and I got to know each other during track season. So we were always hanging out after school. And sometimes Jamie would be there too. Well, the one night him and I were on FaceTime and we were talking about how we really liked each other. So the next day we started dating. And I was good friends with Jamie too. Then after we started dating, she started acting really weird towards me. Like I would try to say hi whenever I saw her in the hallways, and she would just give me a dirty ass look. So then I told my boyfriend how I thought that she was really mad at me, and he said that he would talk to her. Well, a week before him and I started dating, she told us that there was this guy that she really wanted to ask to prom, and she said that she liked him for a while. Well, then my boyfriend said, apparently a few days ago you were hitting on the boy that she was going to ask to prom. So then I started to connect the dots and I was like, oh shit, like for part 2. Extremely toxic best friend part 2. So pretty much her excuse for that was, oh, well, he said that he was going to leak my nudes if I didn't send him them again. Which was a lie because literally half the school already had her nudes. So then I started talking to this other boy. And he lived like right down the street from her. So she was like, if you want to go to his house, you can. And I was like, are you sure? And she said, yeah, just go tell my mom. And I was like, oh, okay. So I went and told her mom where I was going and went over his house. So I walked back to her house and she literally locked me out. Like her mom had to come open the door for me to let me in. And she was like, oh, it's a good thing you came back when you did. Because I was going to drive you home now and tell your dad everything that you did. And she goes, I don't think you guys should be together because you're unexperienced. And she would always tell me how he flirts with her all the time. So after our friendship ended, she goes, I just felt like it was always a competition between me and you.
Storytime on how my mom tried to convince me to have a threesome with her. So I had just graduated high school, and my mom was single for a while. Then she started dating this guy, which me and my brother really liked. But he was a few years younger than my mom. And honestly, we were happy for her. She was very depressed and miserable with my dad. So we were okay with it because she was finally happy. So like I said, I had just graduated high school. And I always said I never wanted to go to college. So I started working retail. One day while I was at work, my mom called me and said, hey, let's go out shopping. And who am I to say no? So after I got out of work, I met my mom, and we went lingerie shopping. That's what she specifically wanted to get. So we were at the store, and the first thing she said was, let's get matching sets. Which was weird coming from my mom, but I said fine, come back for part 2. Storytime on how my mom tried to convince me to have a threesome with her. Part 2. So like I said, it was really awkward coming from my mom, because I've always been close with my mom, but never that close. And like I said, she was miserable with my dad, so I tried to do everything to make her happy. And I said yes. So we got our matching sets and we went home. When we got home, her boyfriend was there. Awkward, but whatever. I said hi to him and went straight to my room. My mom called me downstairs 10 minutes after, told me she wanted to propose me something. But first she said, so you know there was a reason why I wanted to buy matching sets with you. And I said, no. And let's call her boyfriend Brian. She said, well, Brian gave me a really good idea. And I wasn't sure at the time, but I want to try new things. And then she said these words, let's have a threesome. I was speechless. And she said, I know it sounds crazy now. Come back for part 3. Storytime on how my mom tried to convince me to have a threesome with her. So she said, I know it sounds crazy now, but hear me out. And then Brian jumped in and said, it's not an actual threesome. What we really want is for you to watch us, but we want you to wear your mom's same lingerie. And I freaked out and literally rashed my mom and told her that for her, I would do anything. But that is so inappropriate, so disgusting, and most important of all, I said, I'm your daughter. And only after all of that, she realized what she tried to propose me was wrong. And she kicked Brian out and tried to tell me how she was so sorry that she's embarrassed for herself. And guys, I called my dad, moved in with my dad. I have some communication with my mom, but after that day, nothing will ever be the same.
Story time about how I found out who my real mom was. So long story short, I was given up for adoption because my real mom was into drugs. She signed me away as soon as I was born, and boom, I was in a new family. I was 15 at this time, so I was a sophomore in high school, and everything was pretty cool. My parents who adopted me always told me whenever I got to a certain age, I could go talk to my real mom if I wanted to. But at 15 years old, I wasn't allowed to. So one day we got this brand new teacher and her name was Mrs. Green. And it was funny because my birth last name is Green. It's a common name, so no, it didn't stand out to me. I soon became the teacher's favorite. I was always smart in all of my classes, so this was no surprise to me. But what surprised me was when she started saying how beautiful and smart I was and how she knew I would go far in life. So some time later, after having this new teacher, I started to tell my parents about her. As soon as I told them that her name was Mrs. Green, they instantly got chills. They tried not to make a big deal out of it, but like for part 2. This is part 2 about how I found out who my real mom was. So like I said in part 1, my parents were definitely alarmed because they already know everything about my real mom. But I guess they didn't want to alert me, so they let everything go by. So the next day at school, my teacher, Mrs. Green, pulls me aside and says, I have to talk to you. So she says, honey, you're so smart. Your parents must be so proud of you. So she then goes, do you mind if I speak with your parents, Mr. and Mrs. Green? Do you think we could sit down for a second? And I go, sure, but that's not their last names. She says, why not? And I go, oh, I'm adopted. She then says, do you know who your real parents are? I'm like, no, I only know a couple things about them. Why? She says, I have to tell you something. I'm your mother. In my head, I was like, what in God's name? How are you here? I'm like, how are you my real mom? How are you my teacher? Wait, what is going on here? So she says, I'd really like for all 4 of us to please sit down and talk something out. Like for part 3. Part 3 story time about how I found out who my real mom was. So like I said in part 2, my teacher was desperate to sit down with all 4 of us to talk something out. So I frantically say, yeah, sure, okay. So as I head home, and I mean I am speeding home, I tell my parents everything that happened. They then told me, oh yeah, she's been trying to get in contact with you. We just never told you. We were going to wait until you got older. Apparently, she's been watching my every move because she went sober and wanted to get back in contact with me. So as my parents are telling me that it's not safe to be around her and we should just move schools, I'm like, she is my birth mother and I'd like to see where she's coming from. So after talking it out for a while, they agreed that we could sit down and talk to her about it. So once we sat down and talked everything out, we decided that I would see her once a week. So one week I went over to her house and she said, hey, let's take a trip somewhere. I wasn't comfortable doing that, but she said we were just going to go to the store. Once I got in the car, we were driving for over an hour. She pulled over and tried to give me drugs. She was never sober. I sent my mom my location. I haven't seen her.
Okay, so story time. So let's start from the beginning. So basically, I was supposed to go on this trip with the guy I was dating at the time. We'll call him Nick. Anyways, long story short, we broke up. And a few months later, I started talking to this guy. We'll call him Alex. So I asked Alex if he wanted to go, but it was too late. I still went on the trip anyways. By the way, he was my ex, so... But keep in mind, it wasn't anything serious. I always keep a rule that I never date my ex again. Because if it didn't work out the first time, what makes you think it will work out again? So fast forward, we're on the trip, and I'm sitting with my friend. We'll call her Melissa. Melissa wanted to sit up front with all the guys. So I said sure, and we went up there. So we sat there and everything was fine. I was talking with Alex on the phone, like texting him, Snapchatting him, all that. And the guy had asked me and Melissa if we wanted to play Truth or Dare. To be honest, I didn't know what to expect. But also, I didn't want to look like a sellout. So what did I do? Yeah, I played the game. Like for part 2. Okay, part 2. So the rules of the game were you either had to do a dare or say the truth. And if you didn't, you had to step into the bus bathroom, which smelled disgusting. But anyways, we started and the first dare that they gave me was super weird and I felt uncomfortable, but I still did it. Not appropriate for TikTok, so let me not say it, but yeah, so super bad. And our principal was literally 5 rows down from us, which was super awkward. Anyways, we kept playing and stuff, and then came my turn, and they dared me to sit on one of my guy best friend's lap, who at the time had a huge crush on me. I thought it wasn't a big deal, so I did it. And after I got up, everyone in our group started laughing. And I was like, what the heck is going on? They said he got something that also isn't appropriate for TikTok, so I'm not going to say. I flipped out, and honestly, I wanted to cry right then and there. He got so embarrassed, he stopped playing the game, and we didn't talk to each other for the rest of the ride. Then I had to do another dare. Part 3. Okay, so my next dare was to kiss this person on the cheek, which I did, nothing major. So we get to the stop, and our group teacher / leader told us we can go wherever, which was good because we went everywhere with the guys. But I felt a little weird because half of them liked me or thought I was hot. But I was still talking to Alex, so no one wanted to mess with him because he was strong. Okay, yeah. Okay, so back to the story. So anyways, we went on and did some things. It was basically what we did. We bought some stuff as a group. We were chilling out. But we even went on a bus tour, which we almost got kicked out of because some person on the bus kept complaining of us. We weren't even that loud, so I don't know. Well, anyways, when we got back, we had lunch at this cool place with our teacher. Oh, but here comes the fun part. We were ready to leave after the day was done, and on my way home, we planned on stopping at some rest stop kind of place, which is when everything turned to hell. Like for part 4. Part 4. So me and my friend Melissa went to the bathroom, and when we came out, automatically everyone was staring at me, like as if I did something wrong. I have never been so uncomfortable in my life. Like people who I didn't even know was staring at me. I had no idea why, but then 2 of my friends rushed up to me and asked me if everything on the bus was true. And of course I said no because I didn't want them knowing. But then another one of my friends who used to be a brother to me asked me about it, and I said no. But then he pulled me aside and said don't lie to me, so I said yes. Now here comes in my criminal minds detective stuff. I wanted to find out who was spreading a rumor, and I wanted to know right then and there. So I asked one of my friends who he heard it from, and he said he got some random text, and I was like, what? They texted you. Of course, my Matthew Gray Gobler obsessed ass said, everyone give me your phone so I can check it. And they did. I felt so powerful. Okay, but fast forward. My friend kept telling me he didn't know who it was, but I had a feeling like he knew. Part 5, sorry so long. Was I mad? Yes. Was I going to make it a big deal? Yes. After I checked everyone's phone and saw no text from anyone, I had to go to plan B. Tell everyone that it wasn't true to make sure Alex didn't hear a word from them. But then when I got back in the bus and calmed down, the strangest thing happened. So one of my friends in my group took some pill and said that he was horny, and he started to literally touch my thigh. I said, get off of me before I punch you right in the mouth. When I tried to walk away, he stopped me and touched my thigh even higher. So I pushed him away and said stop. What I was really thinking is if this guy touches me one more time, he's gonna have a broken nose. I have more self-control than that, so I just sat back down next to Melissa, and they of course asked us again if we wanted to keep playing. They were all looking at me, and of course I didn't want to be the party pooper, so I said sure. But thankfully we didn't play the whole time. Okay, so story time. So basically one time in 5th grade, my dad took me to get breakfast from Dunkin' Donuts. We went there before school like always, and as we were there, this strange man outside was staring at me and like making faces. Super creepy. We didn't know him or anything, so we walked inside and I was kind of freaked out. I told my dad that I was creeped out by him, and he told me that nothing bad was gonna happen. Or so he thought. So we got our foods and we ate it. Everything was fine, chill. After we were done, we got up to leave. The man was gone by now, so I felt better. But then on the way to my school, I saw him walking on the sidewalk. Like, I figured he was going to his house or like somewhere else. When we got to my school, no one was outside. It was kind of weird. We went to open the door because my dad was a part of the PTA, so he came in with me. The door for some reason was locked. My music teacher out of nowhere ran out and brought us inside quickly. She told us that our whole school was on code red. Scary. And that a man was in our school, so we went inside and I went and hid in the music room. Like for part 2. Okay, so part 2. So I went and hid in the music room. Dad was in the PTA room, which was close by. Literally started crying because I was so scared and they weren't telling us anything because we were too young. I guess they didn't want to scare us. That didn't work. Once the code red was over, about 30 minutes later, we went to class. I went to go find my dad and make sure he was okay and see if he knew anything, and he didn't. When I got in my classroom, we were all talking about it, and my teacher said that the man just walked in and told them he was looking for one of his teachers from like 15 years back. Huh? They gave us a description of the man, and I realized it was the same man from Dunkin' Donuts. He just walked in my school. I was freaked out because I saw him at Dunkin' Donuts before school started, and I hoped I never saw him again. But a few weeks later, I saw him again multiple times at the same Dunkin' Donuts. He literally just stared at me all the time. So yeah, that's my little story.
One time I had to babysit one of my neighbor's kids overnight. We're gonna call the kid Benny. The parents didn't really tell me anything when they left me alone with Benny, but they left me a note and they were like, you can only open it in emergencies. So at this point, I'm alone with Benny. It's like 11 p.m. and I told Benny, I was like, dude, you should like get to bed. It's late. Then Benny starts getting really red and he's like, no, we don't want to sleep alone. Sleep with us, please. I didn't know why Benny said us, but I was like, whatever, okay, like, yeah, I'll sleep in your room, like, it's fine. So fast forward a couple hours, it's like 3 a.m. at this point. This is the best part. Benny starts talking in his sleep and he's like, take her instead. You're not my friend anymore. I am not yours. And I try waking him up and I look at him and his eyes are wide open as he says this stuff. I was freaking out, so I went to go open the note that his parents said was only for emergencies. It just gets better. The note said, we're sorry for not telling you. Run him a cold bath. Call 911 in case anything happens. What the
Story time about how my boyfriend's best friend tried to ruin our relationship. So a little background information. My boyfriend used to be best friends with this one girl. We're gonna call her Jamie. Well, Jamie and my boyfriend were best friends for years, and their friendship was more flirty than anything. Well, him and I got to know each other during track season, so we were always hanging out after school, and sometimes Jamie would be there too. Well, the one night him and I were on FaceTime and we were talking about how we really liked each other. So the next day we started dating, and I was good friends with Jamie too. Then after we started dating, she started acting really weird towards me. Like, I would try to say hi whenever I saw her in the hallways, and she would just give me a dirty ass look. So then I told my boyfriend how I thought that she was really mad at me, and he said that he would talk to her. Well, a week before him and I started dating, she told us that there was this guy that she really wanted to ask to prom, and she said that she liked him for a while. Well, then my boyfriend said, apparently a few days ago you were hitting on the boy that she was going to ask to prom. So then I started to connect the dots and I was like, oh shit, like for part 2. Part 2 about how my boyfriend's best friend tried to ruin our relationship. So like I said, I started to connect the dots after that. And then I realized that she was talking about my boyfriend. We're just going to call him Josh. As he's telling me this, I immediately get a FaceTime call from her. So I answer the phone, and she says, well, I think I should just confront the situation now. So the first thing that she says is, you knew I liked Josh. Like, how could you do this to me? I had a poster board and everything. So I'm just like, well, why didn't you tell me that you liked him? And she goes, what the fuck do you mean? Like, you knew. But I was sitting there thinking about the fact that they were best friends for 5 years and nothing ever happened, so it's really not my fault. And then this girl has the nerve to say, I'm pretty sure if you just break up with him now, me and you can get past this and still be friends. So I said no. So then I called my boyfriend, told him that we talked it out, and I didn't even tell him about what she said or anything like that, because I just wanted the situation to be over and done with. So a few weeks after that, she decided to get her brother involved. Her brother and Josh were best friends, by the way. Well, then her brother told Josh that him and I had been hooking up like for part 3. Part 2 about my boyfriend's best friend trying to ruin our relationship. So like I said, then she got her brother involved. And her brother and Josh were best friends. A little background information here. Josh had stopped talking to Jamie for those few weeks after she called me that night because she was making things really awkward in our relationship and just giving us a lot of problems. So the one night, Jamie's brother texts Josh, and he's like, bro, I think it's mad sus how you cut her off when your girlfriend's the problem. So obviously Josh texted him and said, what do you mean? And her brother was like, she hits me up all the time to hang out. We've been hooking up. I can even send you the nudes that she sent me. And before I started dating Josh, there was this boy that I was talking to for like 6 months, and I ended up sending him nudes. And yes, they got around the school. But surprisingly, Josh had no idea about them. So her brother sent Josh the nudes and said, bro, here, like, see her face is in it and everything. Lesson learned, don't put your face in nudes. So then me and 3 other people explained to my boyfriend that those were from a while ago. And after that, he just blocked both of them and we're still together.